Today we will start chapter number 14, and it is the title of this chapter is Mrs. Ackroyd. Okay, so who is Mrs. Ackroyd? Mrs. Ackroyd is Cecil Ackroyd. Clear? Sister-in-law of Roger Ackroyd. Clear? So what we see in the previous chapter, we saw that there is this conversation between Dr. Shepherd and the detective Poirot, where Dr. Shepherd is laying out his plan or laying out his observation about the case. Which case? The murder of Roger Ackroyd, where he enhances the points where he wants to show that Ralph is not the murderer. Clear? So after Dr. Shepherd's conversation with Poirot, he begins to see how much information Poirot has also concealed. Okay, he showed Shepherd the objects he collected, but there is no logical deduction that he made about it. Okay, so what we see here is that before Monday, Shepherd thought of himself as playing Watson to Poirot's Sherlock Holmes. Okay, but now he realizes their paths are diverged, and Shepherd finally realizes that he and Poirot are not really on the same page. They are not thinking on same lines. What we see here is that in any case, in any kind of detective fiction, the assistant of the detective generally tends to help the detective in solving the case in the similar way. But though Dr. Shepherd is not the actual assistant, Hastings is the one, but Hastings is not present over here. Hastings used to be the assistant of Poirot, but what we see here is that there is no description of Hastings. There is only one description of Hastings, where we see that Hastings is not here. That is only mentioned. Though what we see that the detective is trying or saying that they are bonding very closely, that Dr. Shepherd and the detective is bonding very closely, but in the previous chapter, especially in the last section, we have seen that they are thinking in different terms. So Shepherd and Poirot are not on the same page. Okay, they are not thinking on same lines. Clear? Poirot sometimes asks for his help, but actually he does not trust Shepherd with his innermost thoughts. Okay, and that is quite visible when he goes to his house to visit Caroline and get information about the patients, about Dr. Shepherd in Dr. Shepherd's absence. Okay, so that he can get a better understanding and better knowledge of Dr. Shepherd. So till this time we might have believed that Dr. Shepherd is an acquaintance or is a friend of Poirot, but when we see it clearly, we can get this information that Poirot was trying to get rid of him by sending him to Mrs. Folliot, okay, in order to get more information about him, in order to gather more information about him. Clear? What information that he needs? He needs the information. Why does he need that? He needs those information in order to gather a roundabout or overall description or knowledge of the things that are happening or that has happened during the murder. Okay, during the murder or things that has happened before the murder. Clear? On Tuesday, Mrs. Ackroyd summons Dr. Shepherd in order to examine her. Okay, as Dr. Shepherd's main profession is being a doctor, he is a physician, and she summons Dr. Shepherd, that is Cecil Ackroyd, summons Dr. Shepherd to examine her. Where she claims that she has prostrated by the horror of Roger's death and claims that Shepherd finds it ridiculous. Okay, he claims or he gives or rather he prescribes a tonic for Mrs. Ackroyd, but what we see here is that Mrs. Ackroyd continues to complain. Firstly, about how Poirot has bullied her. Okay, because Poirot was constantly investigating and constantly peering through the narratives of these people. Because as we all know, he has already depicted, he has already shown that these people are hiding something or the other. The complete truth is still absent. The complete truth is still away from his hand rather. Okay, so he actually complains about the way Poirot has behaved with him. Okay, and then he speaks about how Flora should have consulted her before hiring Poirot. Okay, so what we see here is that they should have been happy, right? They should have been happy if the murderer is found out, or when a detective is appointed in case of finding the murderer. They should have been happy, or rather she should have been happy that her daughter has taken the right step, right? But what we find here is that Mrs. Cecil Ackroyd is not at all happy with the conduct of Flora, her own daughter. Before, she did not even consult with her before appointing or hiring Poirot. Okay, she brings up Dr. Shepherd's conversation with Ursula and asks what Ursula told him. Okay, so what we see here is that why would she like to know more about what information is gathered from Ursula? Okay, there might be something which needs to be hidden, right? And that is why that is lurking in her mind. That is why this is constantly being what you can say, is constantly being forced or developed in her mind, that she is not being able to know what is actually happening, and her main motive or her mind is constantly thinking in terms of what are the informations that are gathered, what are the informations that are discovered through Ursula Born. Why would she ask that? Why would she even have the notion of asking that? The only reason that can be present is that there might be something which is linked with her and Ursula Born and with Roger's murder. There might be a possibility of a link, okay, or there might be a possibility of any kind of information which if leaked might be a problem for her. So what we see here is that she is trying to find out what it is. Shepherd senses that Mrs. Ackroyd has something to hide, as I said just now, and she begs Shepherd to listen to her and to present her testimony to Poirot in the right light. Okay, Shepherd says that he will. So what we see here is that she has asked Shepherd to come over, not just because she is in pain. That is just an excuse. Okay, she seems to Shepherd that she is hiding something, and she has asked the time of Dr. Shepherd that she believes or she thinks that Dr. Shepherd is close to Poirot, and she would be able to influence Poirot through Dr. Shepherd. Okay, so what we see here is that Dr. Shepherd is gentler with Mrs. Ackroyd than he was during their previous conversations that we have seen. Instead of brutally telling her the truth, he allows her to speak. Okay, even if she does so in a in a boring way. Okay, Mrs. Ackroyd, what we see here is that she is in the verge of revealing something. She is on the verge of revealing a secret. Okay, Dr. Shepherd perhaps is a medium through which Poirot's all the information could be gathered by Poirot, and that's why she is telling Dr. Shepherd about all the things, or is trying to be in the good books. Okay, so what we see here is that perhaps because Poirot's speech has jolted her. Okay, this speech, in the previous chapter, the round table, where he has said, where the question was asked about, or the allegation was made rather, where it was said that every one of you is hiding something, right? So there were people, all the people who were present in the room was hiding something or the other, and the way that has been said is actually has made Cecil Ackroyd to come clean, to speak her mind in fear maybe, or in way to protect her. Okay, so what we see here is that Mrs. Ackroyd proceeds to explain to Dr. Shepherd that she had many bills, okay, some of which she didn't show to Roger. On the day of Roger's killing, she opened Roger's desk and found his will. While she was reading it, Ursula Bond entered the room, and afterwards Roger came home and Ursula asked if she could speak with him. Okay, so Mrs. Ackroyd begged Shepherd to present this information to Poirot in a favorable light, so that she is not accused of this murder. Dr. Shepherd can see that Mrs. Ackroyd has more to say. Okay, so she is not saying in the whole truth completely. Okay, so the day Roger Ackroyd was murdered, what has happened? We see that this person, Mrs. Ackroyd, that she had many payments to be made. Okay, so those payments need to be solved, and for that she opened Roger's desk, and in order to take some money probably, but what we see here is that she found the will where the property was distributed, right? So, and while she was seeing that, Ursula Bond saw her seeing that, right? So afterwards, what we see, when Roger came home, and even Ursula asked Mrs. Cecil Ackroyd to talk with Roger. Okay, so, and that is what we see, and that is what pricks Mrs. Cecil Ackroyd, right? And as I have always said, as I have always told you while explaining that all those things that are present in this story, the motive behind the murder appears to have a financial angle to it. Okay, the motive behind it is the financial dealings. So again, in case of Cecil Ackroyd, this is coming true, right? The will, that is the distribution of the property, is also linked with the financial angle, right? So that is the point, and that is being shown over here, where Cecil Ackroyd had some interactions with Roger, and she wants this information to be presented in good light, so that she is not the accused. Okay, so Dr. Shepherd though feels that there is something more is hidden in her. Okay, he asks her if she left the silver cabinet open, because from there the dagger was taken, right? And she admits that she did, knowing that some of Roger's silver could fetch a high price. Okay, so she was the one who left the cabinet open, right? And the silverwares could have been sold. Her intention was to sell some of those silver or silver utensils or anything which were present there, in order to get the money. Okay, so what we see here is that this information leads us to get another suspect. Okay, where we get that this silverware or this silverwares, or the cabinet where these silvers were present, where it was where this Tunisian dagger used to be kept, right? So if not she has killed Roger, she has in some way, even unknowingly, helped that person in murdering. Okay, but what we see here is that even when she was what we see here is that this portion where she is revealing, where she is not revealing, or rather she is revealing or confessing, rather, where she is confessing her guilt, or confessing her deeds to Dr. Shepherd. What we see that she is actually trying to portray her in good light, okay, so that she is not accused. So what we see, she has found the will when Ursula Bond has seen her through while she was going through this will. Similarly, what we see here is that she has left the cabinet open because she was of the intention to take the silverwares from there in order to sell them, so that she could make some payments that she needs to. Okay, that is a repetition of the previous thing that I have just said. But what we see, what she is saying is that while she was doing that, while she was looking into the silverwares in the cabinet, Miss Russell startled her. Okay, as she was going through the silver utensils that were present, or silver things that were present, and what we see here is that Dr. Shepherd remembers seeing Miss Russell closing the silver table on the evening before Roger's murder. Okay, so these things are now adding up, right? He also remembers how Miss Russell seemed slightly out of breath at that time. If you remember, Miss Russell. By the way, Miss Russell is also an accused, right? She has also something to hide. Okay, so what we see here is that she was out of breath, it seemed to the doctor that she was doing something suspicious, and it appears, or Dr. Shepherd thinks that it might be a possibility that Miss Russell might have been the one who has starched handkerchiefs, okay, that was found there. So what we see here is that we do not know the killer, okay, we do not know the murderer, but the earlier instances or the earlier chapters suggest that Mrs. Ackroyd has been in debt for a long time, as she has trapped for cash and was dependent on Roger, right? So the financial angle is again been brought into the story, or was present throughout, and is now focused on Mrs. Ackroyd. What we see here is that this trapped for this need for cash has actually forced, or rather led this person, Mrs. Ackroyd, to see or to steal about something, okay, steal money. Though what we see here is that she does not admit of stealing money from Roger's desk, but what she says here is that she says that she only opened Roger's will. Okay, Roger's will of property was opened by her, and what we see here is that she has not yet accepted that whether she has stole the money or not. Okay, so this finding of the will, which would actually explain why that evening she was trying to persuade Flora to make settlements with Roger. Okay, if you remember, what we see here is that Mrs. Ackroyd's admitting that she has been hiding something about herself, or her acceptance of this thing, is actually leading us to unveil the situation which was still not known. Clear? So she was hiding some things about herself, but none of these things seem to be particularly about Roger's murder. Okay, all those things are generally, or is appearing to be is associated with the stealing, right? Stealing of the money, right? However, what we see that her testimony that she gives, or the testimony tries to point out that tries to point Dr. Shepherd in the direction of Miss Russell. Okay, where we tend to find that this information is not leading to the murder, okay, or murdering. What we find here is that this information is actually leading us towards the direction of Miss Russell, okay, who have gone to the summer house, and there might be a possibility that she has left the handkerchief over there. Clear? So what we see here is that this description is actually not mentioning who the murderer is, or who is actually stealing, but there is this, it is actually opening the possibility of who can be the stealer, okay, who can have who all can have be there in these circumstances. Okay, so what we see here is that the suspect is presented in such way where we see that another person is added to this murder mystery and the mystery of the stolen pounds that we see. And what we see here is that Dr. Shepherd leaves to speak to Ursula Born. He tells her that he knows she wanted to speak to Roger, not the other way around, that Dr. Shepherd wants to speak to her. What we find here is that Ursula admits this, but also asks Dr. Shepherd about Ralph Pattern, okay, in a murmuring way. Clear? So what we see that Ursula says that he ought to come back. Okay, he says that Ralph Pattern needs to come back immediately. Okay, so this is again opening another perspective. You will see why. So Dr. Shepherd, when the murder was finally she asked Dr. Shepherd when the murder was committed, when Shepherd replies that it can't have happened before 9:45. Okay, when she asks this and when she gets the answer, what we find here is that there is a sense of satisfaction. There's a sense of relief in Ursula Born, which could be seen by Dr. Shepherd. Okay, so Ursula seems to know Ralph better, okay, than she had let on previously. Clear? So almost everyone is accusing Ralph Pattern, but there are some people who know him very closely, especially Flora, Dr. Shepherd, and now Ursula Born is now saying that Ralph should come back, and they are of the belief that Ralph is not the murderer. Okay, so what we see here is that her constantly saying that Ralph should come back, and after getting the information that the murder has happened not before 9:45, she seems to be relieved. Most probably she is in some way associated with Ralph, and what we see here is that this presentation of Ursula, or this appearance of Ursula, shows that she has some association with Ralph, and when she is relieved after hearing the news or hearing the information of the murder happening not before 9:45, maybe because Ralph Pattern might have an alibi or a witness that she was nowhere near this house. Okay, so have you understood? So what we see here is that this person is in a situation, or Ursula is in a situation where she knows Ralph, or might have some association with Ralph, where we see that this is actually leading to. Okay, so let's move on to the next section. Following that, we see that Dr. Shepherd comes home. His sister tells him that Poirot asked her to determine if Ralph Pattern's boots, which he had left at the three boards, were black or brown. Okay. Caroline asks her friend's maid Clara, who also walks around the three boards, about the boots. And by lunchtime, what we see here is that Caroline has determined that the boots were contrary to what Poirot thought, and that is black. Okay, so when Dr. Shepherd was not in house. Again, Poirot has come. Poirot went to his house and asked her to determine if Ralph's Patton's boots were of which color it was, whether it was black color, or is of black color or of brown color. So as we know that Caroline has serious inclination towards finding information, and she has a friend's maid, Clara, who has been working in 3 boats. She informs that contrary to what Poirot thought, it was black. Okay, so Shepherd can't imagine what the color of the boots has to do with Roger Ackroyd's murder. Okay, so what we see here is that the way that the thing that we see here is that Ralph's Patton, almost everything is against Ralph Patton. But Poirot is taking every kind of step in order to find out what the real situation is. He is not just believing what is being told about him. Okay, so for the second time in Dr. Shepherd's absence, Poirot asks for Caroline's help. Why she is being asked for? Why Poirot is going to Caroline? Because Caroline is an important source of information. She gets all the information. She has a network of friends and people who are interested in gossips. Okay, so fellow gossipers who can quickly gather almost any information that is present in the village. Okay, and this information is actually helpful in finding out what it actually is, what the real situation is, or what the color of the boot for to say is. Okay, so though Christie does not reveal why Poirot is actually caring about the color of the boots again and again, or emphasizing that Poirot and Shepherd aren't always working side by side, what we see here is that Shepherd, like us, is also not being able to understand what the color of the boot is. Okay, so what we see here is that this information is being asked by Shepherd and is received also by Shepherd through Caroline, but in the absence of Dr. Shepherd. That is more important. Okay, so we might get a feeling that, as I have started this chapter also by saying that, we might get a feeling that the assistant of the detective and the detective is not on the same page. They are investigating in 2 different spheres or in 2 different ways. Okay, so it is not generally the case, but what we see here is that this is being done intentionally by Poirot. Okay, because he is keeping Dr. Shepherd busy in some things, in finding out some things, where in that time Poirot is actually investigating through his point of view. Okay, so what we see here is that he is actually trying to find out what the color of the boot was. Poirot thought it was black, but it was actually brown. Okay, so so what we see here is that even the assistant is unable to find what is the reason behind taking the initiative of finding the color. Okay, so let us end it over here. This ends here where we see that Mr. Poirot thought they were probably, sorry, I said it was black, right? Mr. Poirot thought they were probably brown. He was wrong, they are black. Okay, so Caroline says that the boots were actually black. Clear? Ralph Patton's boot had to do with this case, or the color of the boot is not a thing that needs to be found out, because the sole's print is to be has matched, right? The sole's print has matched, right? So what we see here is that this reason behind, or this puzzle that is created around the color of the boot is actually quite puzzling for Dr. Shepherd and also for the readers. Okay, even the writer Agatha Christie is not revealing in this chapter why Poirot is so much emphasizing on the color. Clear? Okay, let's end it here today.